All right. So, yeah, hi. Good evening, everyone. My name is Brajesh Yadav, and I'll be hosting the session for you all from Tech Canvas today. So, let me give you a small introduction about Tech Canvas before we start this session for today. So, Tech Canvas is an authorized training center for IIBA Canada and ISQI Germany, and we are also authorized at PMI for project management certification courses. And herein we help our aspirants in preparing and cracking their certification exams in their first attempts. All right, a small introduction about today's speaker also, Mr. Satish Seelan. So Satish is a IIBA version 3 certified professional with more than 11 years of work experience, mostly working on large system implementation projects across the verticals like core banking, telecommunication, global mobility solutions, and software license management. He has worked with multiple Fortune 500 clients as well. All right. So now I would request to Satish to start the session from here. Thanks, everyone, and good luck.
Thanks, Brijesh. First and foremost, I would like to welcome you all to this session. So over this 1 hour, what I would try to do is I would like to demystify strategy analysis, which is the most important knowledge area in BABOK. So over this 1 hour, I'll try to explain about what are the different tasks and techniques that are mentioned in the BABOK version 3, right? And also towards the end, I'll be taking your questions. And if you have any questions related to the certification CCBA or CBAP, you can ask me. So now let's get started. So talking about strategy analysis. So I believe most of you guys are interested in doing this certification. So 75% of what I'm going to discuss is towards your that which you can use for your certification preparation, and 25% you can use it for your real world scenarios. So strategy analysis is the only knowledge area when you're reading it for the first time, you will not be able to understand anything out of it, because we don't follow as a real world, as a business system analyst or as a business analyst, we don't do anything related to strategy in your organization. You may be working in a MNC, you may be working in if you're working in a product based organization also, very less opportunity for you to get involved in a strategy analysis unless you're working in a startup with hardly 10-15 folks, right? Unless you work in a startup as a business analyst, this strategy thing is something which you will not be exposed to at all. And who really does strategy analysis? I don't know the reason why IIBA has added strategy analysis in BABOK. Maybe they are expecting that down the line a business analyst can also become a strategy analyst. But to be a candid, to be honest, strategy analysis, when you see in today's organization, it is done by the management consultants. So who are those management consultants? Those folks who are working in MBB firms, McKinsey, BCG, Booz and Hamilton, and Bain Consulting Group, and you also have these folks, right? Big Fours, Accenture Consulting, Cognizant Consulting, Capgemini Consulting, all those consulting folks, especially for those folks who graduated from IIMs and top tier engineering colleges, they are called as strategy consultants. So what is the typical day at work? They go and have discussions with C-level executives. That is, if any organization have any problem or if they are looking for an opportunity, they call this management consultants for their advice. So these consultants, they come, they discuss, and then they finally provide a recommendation on what needs to be done. So that's how typically management consulting folks are. They primarily concentrate on the strategy. And as a business analyst or as a business system analyst, where do you stand? Nobody is stopping you from learning strategy, right? So you can, along with your technical deliverables, if you see normal, you may be a functional expert in one particular domain, or maybe you may be a technical business analyst. So in between that intersection, you can concentrate on learning the strategical part of the organization in order to advance further, or in order to position yourself as a strategy consultant at the later point of your career. Now let me come back. Now from the exam perspective, you cannot skip this chapter. So there are 6 knowledge areas in BABOK. I do believe most of you guys know about 6 knowledge areas. So in that, all 5 knowledge areas, you can apply it on a project level, but strategy analysis, you cannot apply it on the project level. You will have to apply it on the organizational level, because strategy analysis cannot be applied on the project, because BAPM, elicitation and collaboration, requirement lifecycle management, RADD, solution evaluation, everything you can apply on the project level, and you will be, whenever you are reading BABOK, you will be able to relate it and you will be able to understand it. But strategy analysis, don't ever commit that mistake of relating it to the project level. Then in that case, you will not be able to visualize. So my only recommendation for you is that, like, when you approach or when you start reading strategy analysis, you think on a wider scale, think on the organizational level, because the key to clear the certification is visualization. If you are simply reading BABOK, even if you read it 100 times, you will not be able to clear CCBA or CBAP. You will have to read it, visualize it, and then you will have to apply whatever you have learned in BABOK. You will have to apply it in the real world scenarios. Only then you will be able to answer all those scenario based questions, case study based questions, which are there in CBAP examination. So my approach or my recommendation for you all is, always whenever you start reading any of the knowledge area in BABOK, start harnessing the power of the visualization. So the first pro tip which I would give you is strategy analysis. When you start approaching this knowledge area, I want you to think that you are a strategy consultant and some organization has a problem and you have been asked to investigate about that problem. So with that premise, for the next 30, 40 or 40, 45 minutes, what I'm going to do is, like, I'm going to create a story, and I'll be doing the master storytelling with all those scenarios that can play out, and you will have to imagine that you are all the hero or the heroine of that particular story. So whenever I tell something, I want you to visualize in that particular angle wherein I want you to be the protagonist of the story. Only when you think, right, maybe 1 or 2 times you read BABOK, it is more than enough. So with that preface, without much further ado, let me get started. So why do we need strategy for the organization? What is the importance of strategy? So I'll not be able to get your queries now, because the crowd size, and that may also delay the thing. So why is strategy really important? And I'll not be able to see your chat section now also, since I'm sharing the screen. So anyway, at the later part, I'll be visiting it. So strategy is important because strategy is the only thing that makes the organization to move further ahead. If without strategy, all those companies, they will not be able to survive in today's world. Can you all wonder? Infosys Wipro was started in the year 1946, TCS in the year 1965, Infosys in the year HCL in the year 1970s, and Infosys in the year 1980s. And seeing them, there are many folks who worked in Infosys and IT. They resigned their jobs and they also had these dreams of starting their IT company, and they started. But whenever you see the scale and everything, there are only 4 or 5 IT companies that are there in the top by the market capitalization. What is the difference between TCS and those folks who just started recently? You can tell me that, like, don't take those folks who started after Y2K 2000. Just take those folks who started at the same year 1990, 1980. The reason is TCS had a strategy. And if TCS is still surviving, because even now everybody are like owning a startup, everybody is ready to do artificial intelligence, machine learning, IoT, but still TCS is able to give a tough competition to everybody. The reason is because TCS is having a strategy in place. So strategy is all about, you are like anticipating what are the challenges that are going to come in the future. How do you position yourself? That is a strategy. And other way which I can put it is, like, strategy is all about having a vision, mission, and objectives. So vision is like, why did you start this company? That is going to be your vision. And how are you going to achieve that is going to be your mission. So if you see all those companies which are still surviving, they would have identified their vision and mission statement. One more example which I would like to quote is, if you guys are following up news, TCS CEO quoted that, like, by 2025, TCS will be like 75% of the employees will be working from home. So they made this announcement in the year 2020. So you guys need to notice that, like, this is one of the strategical plan of the TCS. They are planning well ahead. So they didn't promise you that, like, we will be completely going by work from. That could be just a simple statement, but they clearly gave you the timeline that, like, by 2025, 75%. So it is they are using the SMART framework, measurable and specific, and they are clearly telling you it is going to be 75%. So this is how an organization focuses on giving the value and delivering the value. And the next thing is we will be also discussing about the importance of strategy analysis in IT projects, and we'll be discussing about the input, output, and the task, and what are the most frequently used technique, and what is the most important questions from the exam point of view. So let's get started. So what really happens? So if you think all your IT projects, whatever the IT project which you are working on, there is one inherent need that started or that created that project. If you see any project you take, IRCTC application, IRCTC mobile application, anything you take, there was one business need that was identified, and that business need was finally translated into a web application or a mobile application. So the first step in strategy analysis is there is something that needs to be addressed, and let's call it as a business need. Business need can be identified in 4 ways. The first method is through top-down approach. So what do you mean by top-down approach? Top-down approach is, let me share if I can use the notepad. Just give me a second. Let me use the notepad. Okay. I hope you guys can see my screen. Okay, so let's get started. The trigger point for any IT project or for anything will be the business need. And how do you identify the business need? There are 4 ways to identify the business need. The first method is top down, and then you have bottom up, and then you have middle management, and the third method is through external drivers. I'll give you an example for everything, and once you understand this concept, this knowledge area is quite easy. So now let's discuss the top-down way of identifying the business need. Anything that comes from the senior executives, and then it becomes a strategic goal. Those kind of things we call, those kind of business need, we call it as a top-down business need. For example, TCS CEO saying that like 75% of the folks will be working from home. This is called as a top-down business goal. I mean, top-down business need, because this decision was taken by the executives, C-level executives, and this is something that will be from the top level. It is now being enforced. So this concept is called as top-down. The next thing is called as bottom-up. Whenever there is a problem, okay, whenever if there is a problem in your organization and you want to solve that problem and you need to think about a new solution to it, then it is called as bottom-up. So what can be a problem? So SBI CEO feels that like currently the banking, the core banking system that is used, maybe let's take an example that they are using Finacle. They are thinking the SBI CEO or the SBI managers or the clerk, they feel that like the Finacle system is quite outdated, or it is not able to process this much amount of information. They are not able to reconcile the reports. Their productivity is like, their productivity is getting a hit because of the Finacle system, and they want to move it to TCS, or maybe they want to move it to there is, what is the next core banking? SAP. They want to move it to SAP core banking system. So in order to solve the problem of productivity, or maybe in order to solve some problems of reconciliation, reporting, or anything, you are like thinking that like let's completely overhaul our core banking system. So this, whenever there is a problem and you're trying to address it, then in that case it is called as bottom up. And the next one is middle management. So middle management is more of like an add-on. So it is not at all a problem, but you feel that like, okay, if there is a mobile app, the productivity will increase. If there is a website for data analytics, productivity will increase. So it is not at all a mandatory, but you feel that like when we have this application, high chances wherein our reporting capabilities may increase. So it is not at all a problem. So you see there is a thin line of difference between bottom up and middle management. Bottom up is a problem. Middle management is not a problem. It is something more of like an add-on functionality, or in order to increase the productivity, you're coming up with something. So those cases will fall under middle management. And the last thing is external drivers. So imagine your competitor, for instance, you are working in Amazon, and you feel that like Google has now entered into the cloud space, and Google is coming up with some offers. Google is coming up with a virtual machine, data factories, and a lot of things. Google is trying to encroach a lot of things which Amazon is into. So in that case, you will have to advance yourself. You need to come up with something new in order to ensure that your customers, they don't go into Google Cloud Platform. So in that case, when Amazon Cloud Services, if you're working in Amazon Web Services and you feel that like something I need to do in order to deter Google from doing something, I mean, Google is coming up with some new ideas and you don't need, you have that FOMO feeling. So you feel that like if I'm not doing this now, Google may try to encroach my clients and customers. So very moment you start some project that is triggered by some external factors, or maybe you feel that like you're working in European Union and you feel that like the regulators are very much concerned about the data privacy and everything. So you feel that like, okay, before they tell me what to do, let me work on the data privacy project wherein I'll ensure that like all the data of the European citizens will be residing in the European servers and not in the US or UK servers. So this thing, you didn't, this was not triggered by your senior management problem, or it was not an add-on. This was something that is because of the external factors, you decided that like I need to act. So in those categories will fall under external drivers. So hope I believe you all got an understanding, right? So how a business need gets originated. So these are the 4 ways. Any project you are working in, your current project, I want you to now sit and think, your project which you are working currently, which category does it falls into. So definitely it will fall under this 4 categories only. So now I told you this is more of like a storytelling. So now when they hire you as a strategy consultant, already the business need is identified. They don't want your help to find out the business need, because either it would have come through this 3 ways or through this way. They identify. So now let's take a classic example. I want you all to imagine that you are working in Acme Corporation. This is the most frequently used company name, right? For all the case studies and everything. So now you are working as a strategy consultant for Acme Corporation, and I'm going to be your client. So I'm I'm working in SBI and I'm the chief financial officer of SBI, or the chief technical officer or something, CIO or anybody. So you guys are working as a strategy consultant. I already have my business need prepared. So I want to move from Finacle to SAP CBS, core banking system, which is SAP CRM. Account origination module and everything will be there. So that we'll not go into that specific. So I want to move into SAP. So this is my business need. The reason why I want to move is because I feel that like SAP is having that HANA and other capabilities, data analytics capability, and it is like lot capabilities are there. And when I go with SAP, I can also do the enterprise-wise ERP integration and everything, lot of benefits. But I don't know how to start, where to start, and everything. I'm completely confused because this is something new to me. And currently there are no capabilities in my organization who knows that like what to do and how to do. So that's why I'm hired you. So you guys are joining the firm. The first thing what you will do, I mean, if you guys can unmute yourself, I can hear from. What is the first thing you're going to do? Can you guys hear me, or are you guys not able to unmute yourself? Brijesh, you're there?
We can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, fine then. So what is the first step? So imagine this scenario. Now let's talk about the scenario. So you have been hired as a consultant, and the first round of discussion you need to have with me. So what is the first question you're going to ask me?
What is your plan for the future? How do you see the business in the next few years?
Okay, next few years, that question I will be asking you, right? Because I'm completely clueless. I want you to tell me what is the future for me. Okay. So the first thing you have to find out as a consultant is analyzing the current state. You guys agree? Because you have to understand what is as is. Only then you will be able to tell me what is to be. This is one of the most critical mistakes every business analyst make. That's the reason I use this notepad to explain you. We all are like programmed to think about the solutioning. We don't spend our time in order to understand the problem of the client. we cannot blame. The problem is the entire business analyst framework. The problem is like we call ourselves as problem solvers, but how many of us are really solving the client problem? We are not concentrating on the problem. Rather, we focus on the solution. So we think that like the way how we write functional requirement, non-functional requirements, we think that we are a PA. But at the end of the day, we are not solving the client of the problem, because those are things, the data is not given to us. We are not getting involved in those meetings. So that is to be blamed. I'm not blaming a BA career or BA professional. It is because we don't get that opportunity unless you work in a very small sized firm. So the first step you need to do is analyzing the current state. So I don't want you to like memorize the input and output and all. So I can still go back and present this, but I wanted to do this something on a different scale. So I want you to now tell me, when you're analyzing the current state according to this story, according to this scenario, what do you think could be the input? What is the key document you need?
I mean, your annual reports?
No. So
Process
now you look. No, process document is not needed.
Data.
No. Okay. So now the first thing you need to know is the business need. Okay, you joined that company, okay, and the first thing you have to ask him is like, tell me about your business need. That is the first thing you need to ask him. Tell me about your business need. So only then you will get the details. And then you guys told me about process, you guys told me about documents. So those all things I'm going to write down as elicitation results, because I am going to go and talk to everybody in SBI. I will talk to the SBI IT team. I will be talking to SBI vendors, SBI clerk, SBI managers, SBI L&D team, SBI IT team. I will go and talk to everybody. And those all things I'm going to call them as elicitation results. Because when I talk to everybody, I'm going to get inputs, process documents and everything, right? Whatever the information is that is needed to know about the assets, I'm going to get it. So that's why for analyzing the current state, in order to get it started, you will need two things: business need and elicitation results. And they both will contribute. These two are the only inputs, and the output is going to be current state description. And that is like a document wherein you're completely mapping. This is a document, and this is called as assets document. So you're completely mapping what is happening in the SBI. Completely you're getting an understanding, because you are having a round of discussion with all stakeholders. I told you all stakeholders in SBI, you are having a discussion. So then you're preparing a current state description, and then you're preparing a business requirement. What do you mean by business requirement? Because whenever you are having with SBI clerk, so you're talking with SBI clerk will say, currently I'm doing like this, but down the line, I feel that like when I click on this button, there should be a general ledger report should be generated within a second. So then that time you will note it down as a business requirement. So when he is explaining itself, when he is telling you that like what they want to see in the future, you are making a note of what is there in the current assets. Similarly, when they are telling you what they want to see in the proposed solution, you're immediately making a note. Those things are called as business requirements. So far clear? So far good? Any questions?
Clear.
Okay, cool. Thank you for the acknowledgement. So, so far you guys understood, right? Now let me go back to my deck. So there are 4 tasks. So anyway, we'll be visiting it one by one. So analyze current state. What is the purpose of analyzing the current state? You are understanding the reason why an enterprise needs to change. You understand what would be directly or indirectly affected by the change. So change occurs in the context of existing stakeholders, processes, technology, and policies of the enterprise. So what are the key things that needs to be captured? So the current state description is a document you need to prepare. So what are all the different contents will be there in the document? First thing is, what is the organizational structure of SBI? So CEO is so under CEO, how many departments are there? Maybe under CEO you will have CTO, CFO, and CIO. Under CTO, how many folks are there? Under CFO, how many folks are there? Because you need to understand the culture in that organization, whether it is hierarchy or is it free flowing. So the reason is, when you're proposing something, you need to know if it is like a organization that is completely hierarchy based. Then if you're saying that like tomorrow you need to change this policy, then in that case you need to understand that like it has to go through multiple approvals. But at the same time, if the organization culture is something that is more of like a anybody can take a decision, it is more of like a decentralized decision making organization, then in that case you can propose anything, because you know that like everybody is empowered in that organization to take a decision. I guess those guys who are working in service based companies can relate with what I'm telling. If you want to take a leave, what really happens in a service based company? You need to send an email to your supervisor, supervisor to your assistant manager to the manager, project manager to the client manager. And you see that loop is like 6 or 7 emails. In order to take a 1 day leave, you will have to inform 6 or 7 stakeholders. But at the same time, when you're working in a product based organization or in a startup, you just need to directly send an email that like tomorrow I'm going to take off. There is no approval process at all. So this is the difference which the culture is going to take. Even for a single leave process, multiple hierarchy. But at the same time, when you're completely changing your organization from one level to the another level, so imagine how this organization, the importance of the organizational structure and culture. And culture, I'm referring to the creativity in the organization, or if innovation in that organization. If I need to go and find out in SBI whether creativity and for those folks who are working in SBI, please excuse, this is just an example. So I need to go and find out if there is any new idea that is introduced in SBI. How are the folks reacting to it? Are they able to embrace it? I'm going to do a study. The next thing is, what are the current capabilities and processes that are followed by SBI? I'm going to draft it down. So I'll try to find out, okay, the current capabilities of SBI. SBI may be good in SBI Demat is there, SBI loan is there, home loan is there, and what are the current capabilities? I'm trying to understand it, and what is the process they follow, right from the account origination till the account gets retired. What are the different stages it goes through? What are the process which we follow? Everything I'm doing a mapping of assets process. Everything I'm drafting it in my document. The next thing is, what is the current technology infrastructure of SBI? How many data servers we have? How many folks can log in at the same time, concurrent login? And what is the current IT system, like the CRM? Are we using the Finacle CRM, or is it any other CRM system, or is Finacle is the only system which we use, or are we using Salesforce to find out for our marketing? Are we using Salesforce? I'm going to completely learn about the current technology infrastructure of SBI, and then I'm going to find out the policies of SBI, because devil is in the details. So I will go through all the policies, that like training policy, and is there the business rules, anything. I'll just skim through all the policies in order to ensure if I'm proposing a solution, will my policies take a hit? And then I need to go through the business architecture. Is SBI concentrating on any other, for instance, SBI is into Demat, SBI is into e-remit. You can send money to foreign. SBI having a PAPPF account. SBI is like a nationalized bank. So is there any scope for SBI that in the next 4-5 years, are they planning to come up with some new ideas or enter into a space which they are not? Maybe SBI Yono Pay, anything. I'm doing a complete study of the SBI business structure, business architecture, in order to understand which all areas SBI is concentrating. And then I'm trying to find out what is the current cash balance of SBI. I'm telling them, like, you guys go on SAP licensing and everything. I need to know currently SBI has that adequate cash positions, or the bank account, they do have that amount in order to go ahead with that transaction. Because I am proposing them SBI this and everything. Each license in SAP, it cost around 1 crore, 2 crore. And imagine for 2 lakh, 3 lakh licenses, does SBI have that particular amount in there? And what is their cash savings for the next 5 years? I'm doing that study, financial analysis of SBI for next 3-4 years. And then I'm trying to find out what all things can impact SBI. So SBI, since it is like a government bank, any decision from RBI, it has to adhere to it. So if RBI is saying next 6 months, don't collect interest on those moratorium, you guys would have heard about the moratorium. So I'm doing that study also. So who all can impact SBI? So primarily the major impact on SBI is from the RBI. So if RBI is tomorrow saying that like the interest rate should be 8%, no other go. SBI will have to enforce it. So I'm trying to find out what is the impact on regulator and everything. and all these detailed study I'm going to do it, and this document is called as current state description. And now when I'm preparing this document, I need to talk to a lot of stakeholders, and these stakeholders are going to give me the output for business requirement, because they may tell you currently this is what, but in the future we want this. So whenever they are giving me that highlight, whenever I'm having those solicitation, and whenever these guys are giving me, I'm drafting it separately and I'm calling it as business requirements. So far clear?
Yeah.
Okay. So now that first stage is done. Okay. Now you are in SBA office for like close to 6 months or 3 months, and you got all the details. And now your organization, Acme project manager, is calling you and saying that like, okay, so you now understood what is happening in SBI, right? Now what do you think SBI should do? So that's when you come back to your team, and you will now sit at your desk, and now you will do that envisioning. So now at the desk, you know what is happening in SBI now, what is the assets and everything. So you will take that input, business requirements, and what you're going to do is that those business requirements you're going to translate into the future state. How am I going to achieve those business requirements? What is the path? How am I, what method should I follow? This is what is called as defining the future state. So this is something you're doing from the comfort of your desk. You're trying to brainstorm, trying to get new ideas. How can I enforce SAP? Cash balance is good, financial balance is good, SBI will be able to afford SAP license. Okay, good. But the data migration from Finacle to SAP, how long it will take? Now you'll have to sit and think about it. And then definitely there will be resistant to change, because SBI clerks and managers are using Finacle system for 10 years. All of a sudden, when you go and tell them like tomorrow onwards we'll be working on SAP, first thing they will say, no, 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 I don't want, because they don't want to learn something new. Almost in all the organization, everybody is resistant to change. So how will you overcome it? So what can I do from the change management perspective? You have to think. And what are the current benefits which Finacle system is giving? What are the benefits which SAP is going to give? This you will have to highlight it out, because they are going to do some significant investment. So as a business analyst, you will have to write down what is the potential value that I'm going to get just because of I'm migrating from current system to the future system. That is called as the potential value. So now let me go back. Just a second. So you guys understood analyzing current state. Now let me say define future state. So you're the one who are going to define the future state, which is going to be the next task. So you will take the business requirement as one of the input, and current state description is also used as one of the guidelines. It is used as a reference, and this business requirement you are translating into future state description. So this is also a document. The same way how you drafted current state description, same way you're going to draft future state description. You will keep an eye out for what will happen in the future. So same contents, if from the future perspective, you will be adding it, and then you will be adding potential value. What is something that we are going to get? Because those folks who are in product management and lean and Six Sigma, you guys know what is the importance of value. Whatever you do, it has to be from the value perspective only. So value is the underlying principle in agile, product management, lean, Six Sigma, everywhere what you do, value is the only thing that which the stakeholders will look at. So as a consultant, your job is to tell like what is the potential value that I'm going to get. And the next thing is business objectives, like how am I going to achieve it? So these three things is what you are going to concentrate as part of define future state. Now let me come back. So define future state, you determine the set of necessary conditions to meet the business need. You define the future state at the appropriate level of detail. You provide a clear definition of outcomes, and you define appropriate performance measure. So you take into consideration the business requirements, and the output is business objectives, future state description, and potential value. So once again, what are the key things that will be there in the future state description document? The first thing is business goals and objectives. So business goals and objective, as per the SMART framework, you can write down like what are the long-term goal, short-term goal. So what do you mean by like, so you cannot move a Finacle to SAP system one overnight, it cannot be done. So let me give you an example, real life example. Samsung had their every time when you buy a Samsung phone, you can create your own record, more of like a Samsung account. You can create it, and Samsung will collect all your personal information about like your apps and everything. So close to 1 billion users was there, and Samsung was using the Oracle system, and they felt that like Oracle is not trying to provide them all the capabilities that were needed. So they wanted to move it to Amazon, and this project was like a 3-year project. What happened is that like entire data, they moved it to Amazon Web Services and Amazon Aurora. To be exactly, they wanted to move to Amazon Aurora database, and this entire process took around 3 years. So you need to know that like in this 3 years, you just need not think that like maybe at the end of the 3 years means 36 months. Not this transition did not happen in the 34th month or 35th month. What happened is they did some proper release management. Every 3 months they had some milestones. Maybe first 3 months data cleaning, next 3 months data validation, next 3 months data movement, test data movement, and then data validation, data ingestion, ETL process. Likewise, they had so many milestones, and each of the milestones, data was moved partly into that Amazon Aurora. The same way, business goals and objectives come up with the short-term and long-term goals on how you are going to achieve the objective. And what is the scope of the solution space? So the scope of the solution space in our example is the SAP CRM system. Like SAP, what is like included? Account management, loan management, collateral management, DMAT, everything you will include. And then what can stop you from achieving it? What do you think can stop you from achieving it? You will have to list it out, because at this stage, it is all assumptions and constraints. Out of the thin air, you're predicting it. So something can go wrong, something may not work out. So you may have your own assumptions. You will have to call it out like these are all the constraints that can limit the solution from reaching its potential value. You'll have to highlight it. And what do you recommend the future culture of SBI should be? So if you feel the current culture of SBI is completely hierarchical, you can propose in the future state, SBI should have a decentralized decision making. The manager should be able to take decisions. Or SBI should work on design thinking, or SBI should promote innovation and creativity within their team members. You can promote it. If you feel some capabilities of SBI needs to be removed, or SBI needs to focus on some cutting edge new banking capabilities, you can recommend it. If you feel some processes needs to be removed or updated, modified, or anything, you can recommend it here. And if you feel the current technology infrastructure of SBI is not okay in order to achieve the future state, you can recommend what is the investment SBI needs to make. And if you feel the policies are not good, you can recommend like in order to achieve the future state, what are the things I need to change in my business policy. And one more example, if business architecture you can change, and what are the assumptions, what is the potential value that you're going to get. These all things you will write down in detail as part of your future state description. Any questions till now?
Sometimes the future state can be very ambiguous. It's not always that you know where you want to go, or it may be a moving target. It happens in business. You would have seen.
Yes, 100%.
Very fast.
100%, because out of the thin air you will be doing all this analysis. So that's the reason in the future state description you are clearly writing down the assumptions and constraints.
Okay.
All your thing is based on some presumption. You may presume some things, and you may assume, and that's why you're recommending this has to change, that has to change. So you're clearly highlighting it. So down the line, if one of the assumption is turns out to be false or something, you can go back and check, and you can do that firefighting.
Yeah, and I mean you are basically shooting in the dark here. When we look at the future strategy.
Yes.
I mean, it could be anything. I mean, somebody moves from 3G to 4G. They think 4G is smart, but then 4G has already become redundant by the time you reach there.
True. I completely agree. But that's how organization, right? Because that's how some work. Anyway, next task I will talk about it. Like what can be the impact.
Thank you.
Okay. So far good, guys. So let me discuss about the next task. So now at this stage, you have discussed about like the future state. You have prepared everything. Now the third stage, as a consultant, you need to find out the risk, because as somebody rightly pointed out, I was not able to see your name. So it is all out of the thin air. I don't know whether this will work out. 4G, 5G, you say 5G will be faster, but I don't know. It is all based on your assumption. Yes, I completely agree. But as a strategy consultant, I need to provide a proper risk assessment. So there are three types of organization in the world. Let me, 1 second, let me open the notepad. So your organization, my organization, all the organization will come under the three categories only. So the risk taking, the risk tolerance of the organization, there are only three categories. The first organization is risk seeking. So can you all give me an example, like what are all the risk seeking organization? It starts with T and it ends with A.
Tesla.
It's not a, yeah, it's a US company. One of the best example in order to tell you
Falcon.
about, yeah. So everything. Tesla, whatever Tesla did, right from the start when they proposed their ideas, like we will come up with a car that can drive on their own. So they told us, they made this bold announcement years before when everybody was thinking about manual to automatic. Elon Musk was talking about not automatic. I want a car wherein it can ride on its own, right? So that's what. And now future space travel and everything. So whatever Tesla does, it is completely a risk taking organization. The next thing is risk neutral. Example for a risk neutral organization which you have heard. It starts with G and it ends with E.
Google.
Perfect. So Google comes under risk neutral because Google already they burned their hands in Google Glass and other products. So Google is like very much concerned about losing money. So they are ready to try their ideas. They want to come up with the new ideas, but they want to test the waters. They will not put so much money into it. So risk seeking is those organizations, even though they know that like it is risk, they are not bothered about it. They will go ahead and they will implement the future state. Risk neutral is those organizations, they know they want to do something, but at the same time they are worried that like whether it will have a financial impact, okay, but they will be like on the 50-50 side. Like, so they may have some 1 or 2, 3 iterations, and if they feel that like the product is not going to pick up, they will completely scrap that entire project. So Google Glass was one that well ahead of its time, but they realized that like Google Glass is not going to, so they didn't have that, they didn't focus on that. So Google Glass was the first iteration. They had planned for 4-5 iterations, but within the first iteration, based on the feedback, they understood, okay, this is not going to work, let's scrap it. We'll not put our money and effort into it. So that was Google's risk neutral approach. Same way, one more example is Orkut. So they thought that like, okay, this iteration Orkut, something, they felt that like, okay, this is not going to work out, my profile. So Google has that concept. Whenever they know that like this product is not working out, they will not put additional money into it. They will scrap that project. So those organizations are called as risk neutral, wherein they are ready to take it, but at the same time, it should not have any financial impact or it should not have any adverse effect. The next category is risk covers. So these are all the organizations which are like our TCS, Infosys, and everything. They will think twice before entering into anything because they don't want to take any risk at all. So when you submit them any document, they will not look into the specifics. They will directly go to that risk section in order to see is there any risk. So if they look at the risk and if they feel that, oh, what man, tomorrow if there is something I need to pay the government penalty 50 lakh, then they will say, no, I'm not going to work on this project. So these are those organizations, they're very much against the risk. So they want only those projects wherein the risk is controlled, mitigated, or there is some contingency plan and everything. But if they feel that like, okay, this can be risk, then in that case, they will not take that project. So any organization in the world will come under these three categories only. Why do you need to study this? You need to study this because you need to know what is the risk tolerance of the organization. Only then you will be able to recommend it. So you analyze and manage risk related to the current state, future state, and change strategy. Consequence if that risk occurs, impact of those consequences, what is the likelihood of that risk, what is the time frame when the risk might occur, everything, because this is like the most important criteria on which you need to provide your recommendation. So you will take into consideration the influences, some which can be internal or external, elicitation results, your discussions with the stakeholders, requirements, business objectives, potential value, everything you will take into take, and then you finally you come up with the risk analysis result. So what do you document here? In your risk analysis results, you will document the risk tolerance of your organization. What is the negative impact to value? What are the constraints, assumptions, and dependencies you're calling it out? And what can all be the hidden references? Let me give you a small example. March 2020, those organizations who had already invested their capabilities on their BCP capabilities, business continuity capabilities, right? They were like ready to do work from home when our honorable prime minister, when he quoted that, like, okay, let's go for from tomorrow onwards it is like lockdown. Those companies, they already anticipated that scenario, and they had provided laptops, and they had their VPN setup and everything, right, already configured, anticipating like this kind of situation can come. Because BCP plan 5 is that like entire state is locked down, and no employees not come will not be able to work from come to office for 5 days. Then BCP level 5 gets triggered. So those organizations who already thought about it, they have the things in place. But at the same time, some companies or some organizations, they didn't even anticipate like this kind of situation can come. You can blame them like oh no, but who thought that like COVID will come, pandemic will come? But there are still companies who showed profit in the COVID quarter because they had their strategy in place. Somebody in their strategy team thought about a scenario tomorrow, maybe in 2010 or 2000 itself, they would have thought like, if a pandemic situation is there, entire folks are glued to their desk 24/7, what should we do in that situation? They already had things in place, they worked on it, and they were able to survive, and they were able to show profits during the COVID quarter. But those companies whose strategy team did not think about it, they had to close their shop, they had to shut their shop, and they had to go out of the business. This is what risk and importance of risk assessment in today's world is all about. You need to find out the unknowns in your business. It can be anything. Nobody can tell you like this is what that. It all depends upon your expert judgment or your previous experience and everything. Now onwards, every company is going to include pandemic in their strategy document. But now next 20 years, pandemic is not going to come, right? So you have to be far ahead of your time in order to anticipate what kind of risk can impact your business. Those organizations which did not invest in their VPN, they made their employees to come, and then they need to physically move their desktop to their employee's house, and then finally they invested in laptop. But that was the time when laptop price increased by 10-20% because of that huge demand, and the organization had to lose their productivity because some employees were complaining they didn't get it. Lot of confusions happened. So that is why risk assessment is very, very important from the strategy perspective. And then finally, you have to provide a recommendation. So you see the last section is the recommendation. Why you need to provide a recommendation? Because as a business analyst, it's imperative that you have to take a decision whether should we go ahead or should I do nothing? Because if you feel that like these many risks are there, you will do a study. These many risk value is this much. Should I recommend to the client to go ahead? So at this point, when you feel that like lot many risk is there from SBI to move, because SBI is having more than maybe 10 crores data, not 10 crores, maybe 20-30 crores account data will be there with SBI. All this movement, transition, whether it is possible, will there be a risk and everything when you anticipate, and then you clearly tell out this is not going to work because these are all the risks which I have identified. If we can solve this risk, then maybe we can go ahead, or else I'm not recommending you to even put your first step into. But at the same time, when you know the risk tolerance of the organization is risk taking, you're not going to bother anything. You're saying, okay, let's proceed. Simple. Now we discussed about the 3 tasks: analyzing the current state, defining the future state, assessing the risk. Now the last task of strategy analysis is to define the change strategy. Now at this juncture, you had a discussion with the SBI folks, and SBI folks are like happy with your complete future state and everything. And now they're saying that, yeah, let's go ahead. We are more of like a risk taking. Let's go ahead and let's implement SAP. Now they're asking you to come up with this change strategy. What do you mean by change strategy? I don't know how many of you guys know change management. In your organization, there'll be a change manager. If you're working in a very large initiative, if you're moving from point A to point C, change managers will be completely controlling the project, because right from the training, acquiring the licenses and employee onboarding, everything will be taken care under the control of a change manager only. And his job, until the application from A to C, until the completion of until the migration of C to software C, he'll be there. He'll be one assisting everything. Each step you will have to take with the consideration of change manager only. And if you are interested, it is also an alternate career option. You guys can go and research about change management, and similar to that of project management, it is in high demand. So you need to come up with a change strategy. I told you an example of case study of Amazon, right? Samsung to Amazon. It was like a 2 to 3 year project, multiple milestones, data migration, ETL, a lot of things they did. Slowly they migrated the data. Similarly, here you need to provide a change strategy document on how am I going to achieve from point A to point C, how am I going to migrate? In between, what are the checkpoints? In between, what is the transition states? You may have some multiple transition states, right? You may have to take multiple forms. You may have to take some multiple times. You may during the journey, you may have to take multiple stops. So journey from point A to point C, you will have to take. You may have to do multiple transitions and all. So what are you going to do it? Everything you will have clearly outlining in a document, and that document is called as the change strategy document. So what does it contain? What is the context of the change? What is the justification? What are the resources that are needed? And how will you achieve the value? Who are all the key stakeholders? And in between, how am I going to see checkpoints? What are the checkpoints? So that is what we call as the transition states. So formats, it depends upon the business case, statement of work, or the enterprise strategic plan. So here what you do is that you take into consideration the current state description which you prepared in first task, and the future state description which you prepared in the second task, and risk analysis result which you prepared in the third task. And the only thing is stakeholder engagement approach, which comes to you from the BAPM chapter. I mean, I'm not going to talk about it, it will confuse you. So we discussed about CSD, future state description, and risk analysis result. All the three inputs you combine together and you prepare two documents. One is change strategy document, another one is solution scope. Solution scope, you guys already know, like what are all the key capabilities and processes will be there in the future state, future application. That document is called what is in scope, what is out scope. That all will be done, scope modeling and everything you do, and you prepare the solution scope document. Change strategy, you talk about the transition, how am I going to achieve it, in between, what all checkpoints we can keep, 3 months plan, 6 months plan, release management, everything you will write down the clear step. That document is called as the change strategy document. So you also do gap analysis, the difference between the current and future state, and you also try to find out the enterprise readiness assessment. Is the organization really ready in order to proceed? So there comes a time, right, when something has to be, like, for instance, you cannot immediately start the project. The first thing which you have to do is, like, you have to clearly communicate the message that, like, Pinnacle system is changing. So that communication plan is going to take 3 months or 6 months, and you wait for that 3 months in order to see whether everybody is okay with that change. So you give it some time, and only then, when you feel that, like, okay, most of the stakeholders are ready, most of the stakeholders are now quite okay with that change, only then you go ahead and then you start with your milestone. So that is what enterprise readiness assessment is all about. And transition states and release planning we already discussed. So with this, finally, you will be ending, your stint. You will be providing this change strategy and solution scope document to your SBI CTO or the CFO. And then they will ask you, like, they will thank you for all your support. And then they will pay you your engagement fee also. It can be from $1 lakh or $2 lakh. That's it. And what happens is that from then, somebody will be onboarded as a business analyst. You will hire some 10-20 business analysts, 10-20 project managers, and then these guys will sit and then they create a BRD, functional design documentation. You will talk to the SAP folks and everything. The real project gets onboarded after this particular step. So let me summarize. So we discussed about moving from current state to future state. We discussed about the risk. How am I going to get there? That was discussed. And we discussed about the ongoing activities. We discussed about the techniques. So the most frequently used technique for the strategy analysis is business model canvas is the most frequently used technique. And you also do value stream mapping, process analysis, and document analysis. So these are all the most frequently used technique. And for those folks who are preparing for the examination, so analyze current state, define future state, assess risk, define change strategy, 4 tasks. We discussed about the input and output, the elements in that each chapter have given you, and number of techniques and number of stakeholders. This is for your reference. And for CCBA folks, around 12-13 questions will come for CCBA, and for CBAP folks, 18 to 20 questions will come from this particular chapter. So with this, we have completed our webinar. So now I do believe you guys all got I mean, the time period is 1 day. I was just given 1 hour of time in order to decode and demystify the strategy analysis. I do believe now most of you guys got a little bit of understanding. Now I would recommend you to go and practice, go and read strategy analysis in BABOK. That would give you a better understanding. So open to your questions, suggestions, feedback.
Very nice session. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you, Sam.
It was very helpful. Thank you.
Thanks, Vijay. Anyone have any questions? Strategy analysis. All good? You guys understood? Cool. Any questions, guys? Yeah, Natasha.
Hello,
Yeah, Natasha.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, my question is design thinking and strategy analysis on the similar lines, or is that two completely different components?
So, design thinking, I just quoted it as an example, but design thinking primarily comes for the product management and everything. In strategy, there is no design thinking. In strategy, you need to solve problem solving is what is like the primary skill with what you have to look for in the strategy thing. But design thinking more attributed towards product thinking, but if you can include it, well and good.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
There is no reference about design thinking in BABOK. That was just an example which I wanted to give you in order to understand the concept better.
Okay. Thanks for the clarification.
Change management, there is a guide. You can just download a guide. So there is a BA BABOK, similar to that of BABOK. There is a book on change management. You can download it.
Which one?
Change management guide. Let me check if I can get it. Okay. Thank you guys. Thanks for joining. If you guys need any, if you have any questions or clarification, you can reach out to the Tech Canvas.
Just one.
Yeah.
Sati, there is one question. We're supposed to receive a copy of the CBAP CCBA sample revision guide.
Yeah. Brijesh?
Yeah, for this sample revision guide, actually, I'll share my email ID in the chat box. So you can just send me a test mail. So I'll surely send you the sample guide.
All right. Thank you.
You can share it to all the participants, I hope.
Sure, no problem. I'll do that.
And I hope we are receiving the recording of all these sessions.
Yeah, all the sessions they
This
get recorded and they're
conference is no
uploaded on
longer being
our
recorded.
this YouTube channel. So you can always get these recordings on our YouTube channel.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Brijesh.
Yeah,
Thank you,
have a great
sir.
Thanks, Satish. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.